Hey folks, this is Curtis Brown, your instructor for HSEP 302, and this is week 7. Week 7 is your midterm exam, and so I believe everyone should be in a position to be prepared for the midterm exam. I'll go over that here in a second and tell you about how it is organized and what to expect. But first, let me do a overview of last week, week 6. And as you know, our focus was on mitigation. And you had chapter 4 of the textbook to read, the discipline of emergency management mitigation. You also had 2 articles to read and to, watch a video from a TED Talk, Rachel Kite. I did not have a video of an EM professional on mitigation, but I might have one later in the semester. Again, mitigation is lessening the impact of a disaster, a known threat, and lessening the blow. So it's essentially what can you do knowing you have a threat and lessen the blow of the threat by taking some type of action. That action could be, and a lot of time it is, related to costing money, putting up a flood wall, for instance, in a community that is vulnerable to flooding. Or it could be sort of on the low cost end of things, public messaging, communication. Depending on the size of your jurisdiction, you could probably do something on the cheaper end to promote mitigation. Insurance is a good way to promote mitigation, making sure that folks get the funds to recover after an event occurs. In your textbook, it discussed the National Flood Insurance Program and other programs to assist with insurance. FEMA has really been pushing that more people need to consider getting flood insurance, not just those on coastal communities, because flooding can occur anywhere at any time, and it's been exacerbated because of climate change. Just this past weekend, there was a fatality in Kentucky because of multiple days of raining resulting in flooding, and some of the low-lying areas were hit with some major flooding. We had that occur here in Virginia as well. So the chapter really talked broadly about mitigation, the importance of it, but also all the various tools that you have in your toolbox as an emergency manager, as a community, to promote mitigation. You also had the 2 articles which really honed in on the importance of mitigation as we deal with climate change and the impacts of it, and looking at how we design our buildings, our homes, how do we invest in adapting to the reality of rising seas and the impact of sea level rise in communities. You also had another article talking about from disaster response to prevention. Everyone gets all excited about response because, again, it is probably one of the more exciting parts of emergency management, coordinating resources, saving lives, reducing the damage to infrastructure in the middle of the event. But greater focus and attention has to be placed on prevention and putting the funding and the resources to limit the impact of a disaster. So this article really talks about changing our frame of thinking to make the more exciting part of emergency management the prevention and mitigation part of it. And that was a part of that TED Talk video from Rachel Kite. And again, all of this information from this week in mitigation, you'll see some of it in the test, the midterm exam, and I'll discuss that in a moment. The course discussion this week was really modeled after how a section in your test will be In your test, I'm going to ask you to apply some of the emergency management information that you've learned using a scenario similar to this. And I'm going to ask you to develop a memo to me, who I'll be the city manager for. I'll pick a random city along with the scenario. But I wanted you to apply what you're learning to a real scenario to see how you think and how you use the course reading to justify your action. So in this case, I asked you to consider a neighborhood, the older neighborhood, both in terms of the homes when they were built, for the residents, they're elderly citizens, some on fixed income, majority on fixed income, and the home values have decreased over the last several years because of repetitive flooding. Anytime it floods or rains in this neighborhood, there's some level of impact. And when there's high tide along with a tropical storm or hurricane, these homes have been getting damaged. So this area, based on the scenario I presented, is not going to get any easier or better over the next several decades. Based on the scenario, you're going to see more and more of these repetitive events. They're going to get worse. And of course, if there's a direct hit by a hurricane, this community would be right in harm's way. I really liked the various ways in which you all approached this questioning scenario. It demonstrated some reading, reviewing the readings and considering the different options. Some of you all probably could have done a little bit more in-depth analysis of some of the other options. I was trying to lean you towards one answer, which is always a difficult decision, but it's one that must be considered as we move forward into the 21st century. And that option is considering to buy out the properties in this neighborhood. Given that these individuals are elderly, the homes and infrastructure is older, there might be a potential to buy out the community. And the buyout programs, they purchase the homes for above the home value, so there's some type of incentive to the homeowner. And what the community does is they convert that space to a public park, somewhere, something that can be used by the community. But if there's flooding, if there's a storm, that there would not be any homeowners in harm's way. And so allowing